So you recently wrote an article that really speaks to your specialty or your focus in
Mhm.
counseling of like infidelity work. And so the article is called Infidelity Recovery, Creating a Transparency Plan. As I was reading this, it was so different than really the way the world approaches infidelity and
Mhm.
especially like healing from infidelity. But as you unpacked scripture, as well as just like good relationship approaches and thoughts, like it was so good and really inspiring and brought about a lot of hope as I was reading it. Because when you think of infidelity, you think of, I mean, just brokenness and kind of the end of the road, but
Mm.
really painted a good picture of like hope and healing for individuals and for
Mhm.
couples.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you put it that way, Hannah, because one of the biggest myths I think that's out there about infidelity is that it's the end. It's
Mm,
the end point of the relationship, that there's no coming back from it. And that's just simply not true. In fact, couples who work on recovery, who work through the healing process, find that they have a stronger and better marriage than they've ever had.
mm,
So infidelity is not the end, it's an opportunity for healing and
mm.
really transforming the relationship.
That's so good. So, with that in mind, what inspired you to write this article
Mhm.
specifically?
Yeah. So our hope is, as we go along, to be producing content online that people can follow along with, to get a sense of where they should be at in the recovery process. And we're big advocates of being honest, of a
Mm,
full disclosure process where we lay everything out on the table between the two of us. And that's a significant step. But another step following that is transparency. It's actually, we were living in a place where we were hiding. Now we need to actively work together to live in a very transparent place. And the reason why that's significant for couples is that infidelity and unfaithfulness is a form of attachment injury. And
mm,
when we use the word attachment, what we mean is that people form relationships and they connect with each other. And so when in the context of a marriage, a husband and wife experience an infidelity, what happens is there's a tear in that attachment with each other, which generates a lot of anxiety,
mm,
which is normal. I want to normalize that for people. It's normal to have that anxiety. And so, one of the ways that we can actively work to help that anxiety, something tangible that we can do to begin healing that, is to start being very intentionally transparent. And so,
mm,
it's a next step for couples to take, where they can be actively working the healing process with one another by making sure that everything we do is now in the light all the time.
mhm,
And that, again, helps with that anxiety that's now present at this stage in recovery.
mm. Yeah, I loved how you kept kind of using that term, bringing it to the light in the article,
Mhm.
because yeah, I guess the quick reaction is sweep it under the rug, make
Mhm.
sure it kind of stays in the shadows. Like bringing it to the
Yes.
light is so opposite of like our automatic
Mhm.
response.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we want to be able to run towards the dealing with the anxiousness. A lot of times when couples come out of the affair and full disclosure happens, we view the anxiety that comes up as something that's awful and terrible, and we
Mm,
shouldn't feel it, or when is this going to go away? And it's almost something we start to avoid. And what I want to normalize with the transparency plan is, no, anxiety is connected to parts of us that need care.
mm,
And so when we welcome the anxiety, we welcome those parts of us that are hurting to come forward and be cared for. And so that's just so important and really an opportunity for healing.
that's so good. So when you were putting this article together and bringing these thoughts together about bringing things into the light and navigating the anxiety, who was it that you were writing this article for?
Yeah, so I had so many of my couples in mind that I've had over the years that just came to my mind in writing this article. So many people who are wanting to heal, who are in the middle of this healing process and really needing tangible things that they can be doing,
Mm,
knowing that it's making a difference. Um, infidelity hurts, and you want to know that what you're doing is going to have some kind of positive impact. Only you're in a situation that you never imagined being in, that you have no plan for how to cope with. And so a transparency plan was another thing that we have people do that's tangible. So I picture my couples there being able to hand them and go, do this, do
Mm,
this. This is going to help you guys. For the betrayed spouse who is terrified and overwhelmed because this thing that happened in their lives they never expected, it's for them. But it's also for the betraying spouse who is saying, look at the mess I've created. What could I possibly do to make this any better? I feel like everything I do is not good enough. To hand them something and go, you can do this. Be encouraged. You can do this and you can make a difference.
that's so good. So for both the betrayed and betraying spouse, that's so good.
Yes.
So in the title, you talk about, or in really throughout the whole article, you talk about this idea of a transparency
Mhm.
plan. So what is a transparency plan and when is it necessary to create one?
Yeah. So a transparency plan really is just uh, intentionally and actively being honest
Hmm.
about everything you do and are a part of. Um, a lot of times, what happens for us in our marriages is if there hasn't been betrayal, there's a lot that happens in each other's lives
Hmm.
that we don't necessarily keep tabs on, and we don't necessarily make it a point to come home and have our spouse be aware of, because nothing is going on that shouldn't be going on, and there's no breach in trust there. So we come home, our spouse says, where have you been at today? And said, oh, I was at work a little bit long. And they say, oh, okay. And the couple moves on. No, no big thing. But a transparency plan is preparing people for that moment after betrayal has happened, and our spouse says, if it's the betraying spouse says, where have you been all day? And you say, I was at work. And that's not enough.
Mm,
It's not enough. Their anxiety comes up. And so the transparency is to really actively, purposely lay out all that's going on for both of us to see. And it's healing for the betrayed spouse because they're getting to experience this open clarity, because
mhm,
affairs are about lying and hiding. So here we're doing the exact opposite of that. And
mm,
believe it or not, and I say this for my betrayed spouses, this is tremendously healing for you because secrets and hiding are damaging to you too. And
mm.
so when we start living the way that God's called us to live, when we start living out in the open, that helps to heal you and the wounds of shame that you're carrying as well.
Wow, that is so, so good. So good. And again, it speaks like so opposite of what like kind of images or pictures are given for how to respond to infidelity.
Mhm,
Like come out in the open, like you don't have to be
mhm,
in a place of hiding or secrecy. Like that's powerful. So I can just imagine how powerful it'd be not only for the betrayed, but yes, the betraying
mhm.
spouse as well. So
Yeah.
good. So you share that there are really 5 steps to creating a transparency plan. Can you walk us through those 5 steps?
Yeah, absolutely. So we tried to break it down simply for couples to be able to walk through,
Mm,
to know and understand each part of the process. And the first thing that we do, we have to make the decision to
mm,
make a transparency plan. And I advocate strongly, if you're listening to this, if you're the betraying spouse, I really encourage you strongly to be the one who makes the decision and initiates creating this plan.
mm,
That is corrective. That is corrective because where before you were making the decision to hide,
mhm,
right? And we can't change the past, we can't change what's happened there. But what we can do in the present is make a decision to be open and honest. So when you're the one instigating that, when you're the one who's saying, we need to do this, I want to create a transparency plan, you are now helping to heal your
mm,
spouse. You're just saying, I'm about us being honest. You don't, as my spouse, you don't have to beg me to be honest with you. You don't have to push us to be transparent. Like, I'm on board. I want to initiate it. So first thing is to make the decision to create the plan. And the next decision is to kind of begin writing out that plan. And so I encourage, again, the betraying spouse to sit down and list out all the different areas of their life that they're active in. I encourage people to think you're active in your work environment, where are you active socially? A newer thing, obviously, in the past 10 to 15 years is where are you active electronically or digitally? In the internet spaces, where are the spaces in your life where you're active and you interact with people? Listing all of those out, and what does that look like for you? Where's your interaction? And as you're defining each of those areas, what I would want you to highlight is where are the areas where the infidelity occurred. We want to pay special attention to being transparent in those areas. Okay, we want to pay special attention being transparent in the areas where the infidelity occurred. That's important for both of you. It's important for you as the betraying spouse, because we need to safeguard those areas of your life. There's a lot of shame there that needs to be healed from. And for your partner, for the betrayed spouse, it's important because those areas are going to elicit extra anxiety for them. So we want to be really intentional about listing out what those areas are, and then moving into taking that list and writing out, what does it look like for me to be transparent in each of these areas? What does it look like? And I'll give you some, tangible examples of that my couples have used, which have helped. So one of the ways oftentimes that people do that is in regards to work. You're going to know my work schedule. You're going to know my work schedule, when I'm coming, when I'm going. You're going to know about how I spend my work day. You're also going to know that I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm, for instance, meeting with a member of the opposite sex on my own. If that's, in some cases I work with people, work is a common place for infidelity to happen. And so what occurs is, that's where the infidelity occurs. So the person says, hey, guess what? I'm not going to put myself in a situation with someone of the opposite sex on my own. Other things that people can do in other areas, I'm going to give you the passwords to all of the social media and the platforms that I use. I'm going to give you those passwords. In some cases, I'm going to make sure for us to agree together who I connect with in those digital spaces, that I'm not going to be out and having these friendships with people of the opposite sex that you don't know about. Another one with that would be where, the infidelity has taken the form of pornography use or something like that. My recommendation for transparency in that area is having your access filtered and having your spouse, having the code to that, so you can't change that their software, they're filtering what you're doing, that you agree part of your transparency plan. In some cases I've had couples where they're like, listen, I'll only be on the computer at home when you're there, and it'll be in a location in the house where it can be seen. So you're taking each of the areas where you're active and you're trying to define, how can I make that as open as possible? What does that look like? And then the next piece would be an invitation to your spouse. Again, I want to see the betraying spouse initiate this, but to let your spouse know, hey, I want to sit down and talk with you. I want to go over what I've prepared. And what I'll need you to do is hear what I prepared, but then I want to hear what you have to say about it. So I want to just prepare you. Let's plan a time to meet and go through this. And obviously the last part of this is to sit down and actually have that discussion with one another. It's really important for us to both have input into this plan, for this to be cooperative, to put it in a real simple way. When the betrayal was happening, whether it's with porn or another person, whatever it was, there was an alliance between that item or that person and the betraying spouse. There was an alliance between them, and your betrayed spouse was over here on their own. So what we're doing here is we're breaking that, and we're creating an alliance here between us as a couple against infidelity. So that's an important dynamic. When we do that, when we come together on the plan, it's like us against that, versus me over here with infidelity against you. And so that's important. We talk through it. And as we talk through it, know that this plan is just some caveats to that. We may need to make changes as we go along. Don't look at it as the way we set up is the way it has to be, or if we find problems, things that aren't working for us, we can revise that later on.
Mm-hmm.
And additionally, know that the way that you're transparent during the first year, sometimes the first year to 2 years, will not always be the way that it is. And I say that because a lot of times people are like, I'll never trust again. We're going to always feel like we need all of these safeguards. And as strange as it sounds, if you're in the beginning of this process, the truth is it won't always be that way. I regularly have conversations with couples getting to the point where the relationship is healed, where they're like, we've outgrown the way our plan has been. We really are practiced and good at living openly and honestly, and they're stepping out, and they're able to be freer because they really trust each other and have restored the relationship. So just know what you build here, not only can it be revised, but it's not forever.
That's so good. And I love how you said, as we work to restore, like we kind of outgrow. And I just, again, I guess what I'm like so challenged by and even encouraged by is like this is a process. It's not like an overnight thing, but it can be healed. Couples can grow and find healing and be restored to each other, where some of those things can maybe be outgrown from the plan. That's so exciting and so wonderful. And I think it all, I don't know, just as you're like talking and some kind of processing, goes back to that first piece of like putting it all out on the table and being completely full disclosure, everything, every area. Because then there's no questions like moving forward, so that there can be that restoration and healing. So awesome. So what are some important things that you would say to a betraying spouse who's going about creating the plan?
Yeah. First, know that you making this plan and initiating this is making a difference. That's important. A lot of times a betraying spouse can feel like nothing that they do is really going to make a difference. And I promise you that this is making a difference. Even if your spouse is not able to show you that they're taking it in, they're taking it in. They're taking in the things that you do. They are taking this step in. It matters. So just know that even if they can't express it right now, it is making a difference. And secondly, what I would say, and there are a number of things to list for betraying spouse, but I would say the second thing, and probably the most common thing, is understand that your spouse's anxiety is not an indictment against you.
Wow, that's good.
A lot of times, as soon as a betrayed spouse is anxious, the betraying takes that as a personal attack. You still don't believe me, or gosh, when are you gonna trust me again? And I would just say this: their anxiety is attached to a part of them that needs care and healing. So the fact that they are telling you, and the two of you are having a conversation about there being anxiety there, as painful as it is, because it is still painful, there's healing that can happen there. It's not an indictment of you're doing something wrong. It's not an indictment of you as a person. It is, it is them working on healing in their anxiety, and you as the betraying spouse needing to work on healing your grief. Your spouse's anxiety and other emotional responses will bring to surface the damage that this infidelity has done to you. And so understand that you actually need to process your emotions and your grief as well, because you've lost here.
Wow. That's so good. So good. I love that, Shaun. And so on the other end of that, what would you say to the betrayed spouse as this transparency plan is getting created?
Yeah. So I would kind of say the same thing about anxiety. maybe just a little bit different, I would say I want you to have compassion with when the anxiety comes up.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that that's a part of you that needs care. Our response sometimes to our own anxiety can be impatience and
Yeah.
crisis, to go, gosh, I'm so tired of feeling this. When is this ever going to end? I don't want it. I want to encourage you, it will get better. But that part of you needs compassion.
Mm.
It needs patience in that. And the second thing that I would say is having a good transparency plan. Um, just know, that there's no way to plan for everything.
Mm.
Um, and just because we can't plan for everything doesn't mean that something bad has happened or will happen. I think
Mm.
sometimes we can get a sense of security from the transparency, from knowing everything, but we all live life, and there's going to be times where things don't go just exactly right. And so know that you don't have to plan for everything. You don't have to have everything always go exactly right. And if an issue comes up, where, your spouse is late coming home from work, or something like that, we can try to walk through that together. We can
Mm.
try to walk through that together. It doesn't always mean that there's been a breach. It doesn't mean something wrong has been done or that they're back being unfaithful again. It means that life happens. And so let's
Mm.
work through that together.
That is so, so, so good. And I love just that self-compassion piece that you're
Mhm.
talking about there. That's so good. So what would be your final piece of advice or encouragement to a couple that is walking through infidelity recovery and really utilizing a transparency plan?
Mhm. So what I would want people to know is that this is an active and a tangible thing that you can do to help restore a sense of safety to the relationship. With that being said, you're kind of balancing two things in recovery. You're balancing the tangible things that you can be doing, such as, we're going to do full disclosure, we're going to have transparency plan, or who are we going to tell about the affair and how, and those kinds of things. You're balancing that also with this other piece of the work over here, which is actually processing through the pain, the emotional pain. And what happens sometimes is we assume that things like plans can take the place of having to process our emotion. And
Mm.
so what I want to encourage people is understand that there's two tracks. There's two places we have to go in recovery. One, yes, is this transparency plan and other items that are we're gonna do these things. We're gonna check these boxes. We're gonna do this together. Those are really, really valuable. But understand that we still have to go over here and take time to process the emotion
Mm.
of it. And these plans, um, there's no way to plan enough in a way that it will process your emotions so you don't have to.
Wow.
So just know that we need both of those things.
Wow. I've not heard it put like that before, but that is so good and so practical, like
Mhm.
understanding the two pieces with that.
Yeah.
Shaun, thank you so much for putting your specialty, your practice to paper, because it has blessed me, it has encouraged me, and I know it'll do the same for many people in the days to come. And so this was such a great conversation
Mhm.
around this idea and this practice of a transparency plan. So thank you so
Yeah.
much.